And I'm gonna give the word to Tosana. Thank you, Tosana, for being here. Tosana is our youth facilitator from the Youth Hub. And please go ahead, Tosana.
Thank you, Nati. Can you hear me? Yes. Welcome, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today with you. My name is Tosana. I am a socio-environmental researcher, rights of nature advocate, and climate activist. I will shortly introduce the book clubs and then give the word over. So since 2021, the Youth Hub has been hosting a book club for the rights of nature. And in this space, we are introducing youth and young professionals to the most important and impactful books and publications in the field of rights of nature, environmental law, theory, and philosophy. So far, we have discussed The Spirit of the Rainforest by Rosa Espinosa, Co-Creating with Nature by Pam Montgomery, Ecological Jurisprudence by Alessandro Pellisson, The Stories in Our Bones by Osprey Oriole Lake, Should Trees Have Standing by Christopher Stone, The Dream of the Earth by Thomas Berry, Earth Democracy by Vandava Shiva, and Wildlife by Cormac Colliden, amongst many others. And today we are enriching this lovely list with a very special virtual book club launch of Is a River Alive by Robert Macfarlane, as well as river guardians Viviana González representing the Atrato River and Ramiro Ávila representing the Machángara River in Ecuador, who Natalie will now introduce to us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tosana. And it fills us with so much hope and joy that we have such an important youth movement joining the rights of nature, promoting the rights of nature learning, and of course, using these tools that we have from these amazing people that we admire so much and have put their words into books that can be replicated and shared around the world. So thank you, Tosana. Thank you for the Youth Hub for the book club. And we will be very happy for the book club to be reading Is a River Alive and sharing it with more youth. So without further ado, I'm going to present our webinar today. So welcome everybody and thank you for joining us in this inspiring gathering. Today we are celebrating not only a powerful book, Is a River Alive, but also the vibrant growing movement that this book reflects, the Global Rights of Nature movement. My name is Natalia Greene, and on behalf of the Global Alliance for the Rights of Nature and the Youth Hub, it is a very special joy to welcome each one of you, students, activists, river guardians, academics, community leaders, and allies from all over the world. Your presence is a reminder that this movement is not only an idea that is contained in a book, but it's alive, it's expanding, and is rooted in the struggles and the hopes of the people that are defending their lives, defending their lands and their waters every day. Is a River Alive invites us to revisit a question that communities have answered for millennia, that rivers, forests, mountains, and ecosystems are living beings with intrinsic rights. Today, we will not only dive into the question with the voices of those who embody this understanding, the guardians who are speaking for the rivers, the legal innovators, and the youth leaders, but of course with the author himself. Welcome, Robert, because you have helped translate these ancient truths into language that is accessible for the world. This is not just a book. A club conversation is an invitation to rethink our relationship with the earth, to understand law as a tool for healing, and to imagine a world where nature is recognized not as property, but as rights-bearing entities and members of this life community that we're all part of. So thank you all for being here and thank you for caring about the world's rivers, about justice, and about the earth. Let's begin this journey guided by the wisdom of the river that indeed is alive. So thank you for being here today. And we're going to open this webinar with Ramiro Ávila Santa Maria. Ramiro, thank you for being here and for being the lawyer for the Machángara River. Tell us about that story.
Hola, muchísimas gracias.
Thank you so much. I would like to mention that I'm very happy to be here with my idols. Actually, Robert is one of them. And he's one of the persons that has given me a reason to continue to keep feeling love for the nature and love for walking and trekking and for the earth and for the rivers. I admire you, Robert. Thank you so much. I love you so much. And thank you for those amazing words when you write a book, when you wrote the book. You are my idol. I would like to mention that we cannot understand humanity without rivers. And we cannot understand cities and populations if they are not around a fountain of water, right? Have defended with a collective here with academics the river that runs through my city, that is Rio Machángara. I live in Quito. This is a city of 3 million people, and it's a city that more than 1,000 years, the reason why a population called Kitucara that still lives here, it's because the Rio Machángara was a river that provided transport, food, water to their plantations. That river, more than 100 years ago, was a poet, an Ecuadorian poet, whose name is Andrade, who's called by Andrade. He sang a song to the river, and he mentioned that the river was a source of inspiration that cleansed his soul and the smell of mint. And nowadays, the river is one of the sources of contamination. The biggest sources of contamination in Quito is the reservoir of shit of the citizens in Quito. It's full of trash, and it's a sick river. And the Kitucara population is one of the Freddy Simbaña, one of Kitucara members, he mentioned on this trial about the Rio Machángara, he mentioned the river has life, is alive, that he has a heart, that the river breathes, that the river has a community. And within the community of the river, he spoke about, in particular, about frogs. They sing when they are close to water. They announce the rain. They announce humidity. And they are the symbol of clean water as well. Frogs, they still are singing. They're still singing in Quito. And that means that the river is still, besides the high levels of contamination, is still alive. And what the river is doing, he mentioned Freddie, is screaming in pain. He's screaming in pain, and he's asking for help. And this is one of the motivations that we had to defend the river with the very powerful tool that we have in Ecuador, that are the rights of nature. In Ecuador, the rights of nature, they are recognized in the Constitution, and the Constitution says that the nature, the ecosystems, and the elements of the ecosystem, they have 4 rights. The first one is the vital cycle. The second one is the structure, natural structure. The second one is to accomplish their functions, to be able to accomplish their function. And also the last one is the evolution processes. I'm going to mention 2 of them that were recognized to the Machángara River. The first one is the right to the structure. If you see the river, if you understand the river, there are certain parts of the river where it's where we have taken to other spaces, other places. We have in his structure, the logic is that they have a nowadays that this is an Indian river. He receives water from El Atacazo mountain and Pichincha mountain, and now he's receiving from the mountains called Cotopaxi and Sincholagua, and the other one that it's called Antisana. Now the river has water as it's been an Amazonian river, and what's happening in river, there's a lot of erosion because he's looking for his riverbed, and he's expressing himself that he needs to go back to his normal, natural riverbed. And the other, right, that the court recognized that we have violated the structure of the river, and we also have violated the ecological functions of the river. We can see where the river starts, that there's clear water, that we have fishes called criadillas, that we have frogs, that we have birds, that there's a whole ecosystem around that river. But when the river enters the city, all that biodiversity gets lost. We lose that, and all those functions the river now, the Quiteños and Quiteñas and the state, the national state and the local state has we cannot accomplish all the functions that the river has for so long, for so many years, for thousands of years. So today the river it's a trash dump. So, and with this, I'm going to finish my speech. The municipality within the trial, they were saying that it was not necessary to declare them as one of the explanations that they gave us, that we gave us, it was, dear judge, the river has been a deposit, a trash for the Quitos and Quiteñas. We have given their backs to the river. So now what we want to do is we're going to give him the face. We want to feel sorry for the river because what we've done for this we need to be proud of our river that feeds us, that helps us that gives us life. So that's what I wanted to share with you guys today. Thank you so much.
Ramiro, that was amazing, and I'm so proud of like all the people and collectives that we all worked for the Machángara River that was ratified with its rights last year, and now not only this municipality but every municipality that comes needs to make sure that hopefully one day our children will bathe in that river, and that's our dream. Ramiro, before going on to Viviana, I just wanted to listen to you. We just lived a really powerful experience in Ecuador. The yes one, it's the no one over the yes live one, and we ratified the constitution. Can you just share a little bit about what does this mean for the world?
Yo siento que
Yes, I feel like the declaration of the rights of the nature, it has been a huge switch in the logic of understanding nature. In these times where we talk about climate crisis, climate change, we have so many disasters that we cannot understand. The one of only reason, or one of the reasons that explain this, is that we have considered nature as an object. And this is an object that gives us wealth, that gives us, or an object that we try as a dumpster, right? So this look has provoked so many disequilibriums in our planet that it hasn't been able, it has no capacity to assume all of this carbon dioxide because we are addicted to fossil fuels. So this and this is why this is like why the earth has a temperature right now. It has a fever now, right? So that's why she wants to go back to their natural state. And one of the biggest and symbolic mechanisms to change this way of seeing nature as an object is to say that it's a person. We need to say that it has life, that it has a story, that it has a context. And also the idea of the rights of nature allows us from the logic from the rights to put responsibility upon the ones that we have created this. So human beings, the human species has, and also of course the big companies that they consider the nature as a resource, right? That is infinite resource. So that declaration here in Ecuador inspired a fight for so many rivers in the global aspect as well. I think that is the fact that we are part of that is part of the speech of movements around the world, more than 51 countries, that has been for me one of the symbolic conquers most important, that it's altering the reality and that it's improving the health of our planet.
Ramiro, and thank you so much for exposing that this idea that inspired the world in 2008 with the Ecuadorian Constitution was ratified last Sunday with 62% of the population voting for no. We want the Constitution, we want the rights of nature, and we want to keep on inspiring the world and inspiring more and more ecosystems to have rights. And having said that, I want to give the word to Viviana González. She's a member of the Guardianas del Atrato. And to be honest, In Ecuador, I really admire the verdict that we have for Dos Cedros. That is something that Robert can tell us a bit more because it's in his book. But one of the verdicts that I love the most is actually the one with the Atrato River. And I think the Atrato has really given a lot of guidance to the world and to the definition and to the advance of the recognition of the rights of rivers. So Vivi, we want to hear what you have to tell us about the case of the Atrato River and how are you coping with it as a guardian of the Atrato River. Go ahead, Viviana.
Hi, Natalia. How are you? Thank you so much for the invitation. I'm very glad to share with you here today, with you all. I'm part of Siembra, that we are the organization that we help the defenders of the river, Atrato, and I've been lucky to be part of this process for the past 8 years that gives the rights to the river. So Robert, in his book, he was wondering a very subjective question: are the rivers alive? And I believe the Atrato people, they answer, yeah, river is life. Atrato is life, and it's the one who gives life. So that feeling was the one that the Constitutional Court, when they received, where they didn't offer, they didn't ask for rights for the river, but yes, to look for legal protections for the river and their inhabitants, brought this declaration that opened a lot of doors for the territory and also for other places and other to keep moving with everything that Ramiro already explained already. So the court recognized 4 rights to our river, Atrato. First of all, because of the illegal mining gold that we were having in the river, and that also responds to a very complex context in the economic actors that have been using the territory and the river and the communities. So we are now protecting the integrity of the river. So we gave him 4 types of rights: conservation, restoration, and after this declaration, we had a next question. So yeah, the river is alive, and it's not only alive, yes, it gives lives. I always like to bring one of the words of one of the leaders from this demand. Yes, the court is not doing anything new, and we have understood that human beings, by the fact that we are alive, we have rights, right? Human rights, and the river that it's also alive gives us life. How come it wouldn't have rights, right? So this was a decision that we understood this perspective from the territory, that what river means and what the Atrato River means. And this has been mobilizing a lot of people around this cause. And the next question: who speaks about the river? Who speaks for the river? So the court brought the following the Rio and the Nuvi in New Zealand. They spoke about creating a commission of guardians, one representing the state and one representing the communities. In the Colombian case, we didn't want to replicate as the same case in New Zealand through spokespersons. See, we needed to create a community that speaks for the river. So the government defined that those guardians would be the Ministry of Environment, with the minister as the head of the ministry. And as part of the communities, we build a community of guardians who can speak for the river, right? So the inhabitants of the river, organized inhabitants of the river, they were able to speak for the river. So the Atrato River has also a trajectory of mobilization from the civil society and indigenous communities in Afro-Colombian communities as well around the defense of their territories and their rights. So we also have these figure of authorities, indigenous authorities, and in case of Afro communities, we have the communal councils. So what we decide is that these authorities, these ethnic authorities, this collective, they would represent the river. We invited more than the four that demanded this at the beginning to form and amplify this and legitimize this. And all the trajectory of the river where was more where the presence of the Black communities were 80% and indigenous communities at 12%. So this guardians transformed into this voice, this strength that talked about the river. And I believe that beyond the how to face the contamination, avoid the illegal mining in the territory, and also to repair those damages. Those were part of a sentence as well. And one day we will have the opportunity to talk a little bit more about that. But the fact that we gave rights to the river, yes, it did change the way that we can face this conflict, this social environmental conflicts in Colombia. And one of the most important things that we did, that we generate a lot of mobilization, social mobilization, and also the court to recognize in a legal level the value that the river has for their communities, that mobilize a lot to our citizens. That we created this campaign, Todos y Todas, we are guardians, because there were part of 7 organizations were part of this coalition. We have 14 faces, let's say, community faces that speak about Atrato, but all of us are guardians. Any person within the community or outside the community could feel and be part of the defense process of this river. You can be part of this collective voice of the Atrato. So this has allowed us to strengthen our ethnic authorities that they were forcing the state in a certain way their rights. The conflicts that they were similar, but now the Atrato is this articulate being that allows us to think the territory with the vision of a future. And so that's allowed us to build this and to build this social organization for that. That was we need those guardians that are the visible face with the state as to talk to about the decisions, but also this has allowed us to strengthen the social bond. And it also has helped the educational process related with the environment, and how this fight against the climate change has also a social aspect. So with the gardens, we have also built a youth network of people, leaderships, younger people that in the future could be part of this coalition and speak about the river, and always replicate the work of the gardens. And we have also wanted to we have built festivals, for instance, to talk about the river, to talk about the culture, Atrateña culture. And I believe that we have done a lot of things, and without that recognition, the legal measures to avoid this problem, they wouldn't have had the impact that we had. Always talking about the river is alive, and that we need to articulate with the government to propose solutions for the communities and the territory. So this is an integral way of looking at this problematic. Thank you so much, Vivi. This is so nice to understand that you are behind this process.
Sure that river and the rights that were guaranteed in that verdict can happen with a participation of the community. So before I give that word to you, Robert, I just want to mention that we have counted so far more than 45 rivers with rights in the world. So from the Vilcabamba River to the Wanganui River to the Atrato River, we have more than 45 rivers with rights, and this has really allowed us to expand the rights of nature movement to all over the world. This has allowed us also to be winning 2 Goldman Awards. I think that is important to recognize that last year, Mar Menor was given the prize to Maria Teresa Vicente. So Mar Menor in Spain, that is a water body, was thanks to that work, Maria Teresa Vicente received the Goldman Prize. And this year, Mariluz Cañaquiri, a Cucama woman from Peru, received the Goldman Prize for the work on the Marañón River. These are just like a few examples of how this is moving forward and how the recognition of the rights of the river is so amazing and really moving us forward. And I just want to acknowledge that it was almost 2 weeks ago when we left Belen on Saturday, the 15th, before we finished the GARN gathering. We were actually able to invite 2 amazing, beautiful Wanganui Maori friends from the Wanganui River, Ned and Rihi. And when we were at the river, we were at the Rio Wama and the River Wama in Belen. I remember Ned told us the water of the rivers unites us when the land separates us. And it was a really amazing and powerful experience to be rowing there with all our friends from the Rights in Nature movement and our Wanganui friends, and really understanding that we are the river. It's not only a saying, we are the river, and the river unites us. And I think that is one of the most important messages that you're bringing, Robert, to the world. And through literature, you're allowing this message to move forward. So Robert, tell us about your book. We're really excited, and thank you for giving us this gift.
Thank you, Natty. Thank you, Ramiro. Thank you, Viviana. Everyone present. What an honor to be in this room with you all. My book simply would not exist without Ramiro, without Natty, and without GARN. It is no exaggeration. It is very straightforward. And for those who don't know and haven't read the book, Ramiro and Natty both feature in it. Natty was incredibly generous in supporting me, and as I found my way into the geography and the ontologies of this project, and has, as all of you I think here know, is a beacon for the beacon. You know, the beacon that is Ecuador, the beacon that is the 2008 Constitution, and shining out all of that radiance is Natty, who is a selfless amplifier and organizer and inspirer, and she inspires me. And then Ramiro, what an extraordinary privilege it was to travel to Los Cedros, the cloud forest, as you will all know, in northern Ecuador, that was saved from imminent and pretty much total destruction by that extraordinary ruling handed down by the Constitutional Court, a panel of judges headed by Agustin Grijalva Jimenez, and Ramiro was one of the other 2 judges involved in that remarkable landmark judgment. So to travel with Ramiro to Los Cedros, as I did in the autumn of 2022, and to see Ramiro and Agustin meet that place of extraordinary ultra life for the first time, because they had been unable to meet the forest during the course of the judgment because it was in COVID times, was one of the great honors of the journeys I took during the writing of this book. And I just also want to take a moment to celebrate this extraordinary moment that Ecuador has again delivered us with the no vote, the quadruple no vote. We're speaking 9 days after this absolute triumph, and I just thought I would read a couple of sentences from Natty's brilliant, very recent article. The vote reflects a collective intuition Our constitution, with all its flaws and its many pending tasks, remains a global beacon for ecological jurisprudence, plurinationality, and the protection of territories. I feel proud of Ecuador, proud of the communities, women, indigenous peoples, youth, and civil society organizations who mobilized with clarity and courage. And yes, 100 times yes. I feel so proud still to be connected, closely connected with Ecuador, with Los Cedros, with many of the activists and lawyers inside the country, Ramiro and Nati among them. So as Nati rightly pointed out at the head of this discussion, the question of the title of my book is, for many communities, and has been for many centuries, not a question. Of course the river is alive. It is absolutely self-evident. You just simply reorganize the grammar. A river is alive. But the question crept in, and it crept in as the cognitive empire of rationalism, we could say, began to extend its domain, its geography, much of it stemming from my country, England, exported as a form of colonialism, colonial capitalism. It was part of the baggage of empire, as it were, the top-down impositions of empire. Empire understood that in order to extract maximally from its colonized subjects, human and more than human, it first needed to mortify them imaginatively, to render them as dead, non-living matter. And then they were philosophically as well as practically more available for extraction, conversion, consumption, and disposal. And indeed, in my country, in England now, there is probably, arguably, no other country in the world where rivers are more philosophically or indeed ecologically dead and dying. We, in many ways, bequeathed the cognitive empire of rationalism, and now we are reaping its consequences. In my country, a young story, a very powerful story, it has turned out, has been told about rivers, and it is the story of privatization. We have privatized our freshwater and our river system, our water body system in England. It began in 1989. It has delivered an enormous shareholder dividend, much of it leaving this country and fleeing overseas into the hands of investment bankers, equity traders, and so forth. And this crisis has been brought into being by a political, really an ideological model, and also by a kind of underinvestment in what we could call imaginative infrastructure as well as physical infrastructure. We have forgotten how to relate to rivers. Rivers have become one-dimensional water, to paraphrase Marcuse. And the duty of care for rivers, who extend such care to us, has been abrogated. We would use the formal term of art, as it were, has been abandoned. Regulation in my country has gone unenforced. Monitoring of rivers has gone strategically underfunded. And rivers that were named as gods, the Shannon in Ireland, the Dee in Scotland, are now ghosts, really. And it is unremarkable in my country that a company registered yesterday in the eyes of the law is the bearer of a suite of rights, some of which are guaranteed under the European Convention on Human Rights, including the right to privacy and the right to a fair trial, and yet a river who, and I say that pronoun deliberately because in English we tend to say the river that or the river which. We depersonalize our rivers grammatically. So I now only speak of the river who. The river who flows through my landscape and has flowed through it for 10,000 years has no rights at all. So I began writing this book 5 years ago in a context of philosophical and ecological crisis. We now have not a single river in good overall health in the entirety of England and Wales. Not a single river. Every single one fails a chemical health test, and only 14% of rivers are in good ecological health. So I watched our rivers become first undrinkable, and then unswimmable, and then untouchable in places. And it was clear to me that new stories, some of which were very old stories, needed to be told again in my country. Stories that could contest and pluralize and irrigate and eventually replace this deadly young story of privatization. But it did not seem to me that those stories were available in my country. So I went elsewhere. And over the course of 2 years of quite intense traveling, fieldwork, and research, I went to 3 continents, 3 riverscapes, where, on the one hand, rivers were under threat of death, but also where rivers were being radically differently imagined to the imagination of privatization. And the first of those countries was, of course, Ecuador, which, as we all know, is the most, without doubt, a small country with an immense moral imagination. I have no hesitation in describing Ecuador, and you have just proved it again, as the most pioneering nation state in terms of imagining the political relationship between state, citizens, and what we awkwardly call the living world. And the 2008, the Monte Cristo Constitution, of course, was such a powerful moment and document. And then this remarkable ruling was handed down in 2021. And so I was drawn first to Ecuador. And I still remember the extraordinary moment when I realized that the name of the forest that had been saved by this astonishing ruling was Los Cedros. And Los Cedros translates as the cedar forest or the cedar wood. And I remember in this very chair, I sat back and I was silent for a while. And you'll be wondering why. I'm not often silent, but it was because the cedar forest is the forest at the beginning of world literature. The oldest written story we have in world literature is called the Epic of Gilgamesh. It comes from Mesopotamia, the land between 2 rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates, and it was written on clay tablets in its earliest form around 4,400 years ago. And it concerns a river, the Euphrates, who flows through a forest called the cedar forest, Los Cedros. That forest is destroyed really by extractive interests. 2 rulers called Enkidu and Gilgamesh go to the forest, they chop down every tree in the forest, they destroy it entirely, they float out the timber on the river, and they kill the animate spirit at the heart of the forest, a demon they call a demon, but really a river guardian, a forest guardian called Humbaba. So I realized that the oldest story in the world was being retold in Ecuador, but with a different ending, an ending in which the cedar forest survived and the extractive forces were turned back from its brink instead of plunging into its heart and killing its Humbaba, its guardian spirit. I had extraordinary times in Ecuador. We can talk about them. I write about them. Times I will never forget that have changed my life forever. I then traveled to 2 other places, and I'll just mention them briefly, and then I'll loop back to my own country, and then I'll stop. The second was India, southern India, Tamil Nadu, Chennai, the city of Chennai. And there I spent time with extraordinary water activists who were trying to imagine against enormous political, infrastructural, chemical challenges a just future for humans and more than humans and water bodies alike in that city. And I saw rivers there who were as close to dead as any river stretches I have met, at least the times I saw them. So 0% dissolved oxygen, 0 species count for parts of the year. And there the rivers were under threat of death from pollution, sewage, chemical, tannery works, and garbage. And yet here were these extraordinary young people, led by a remarkable young man called Juven Aves, working to imagine rivers and people in a just relationship with one another. It was the place I felt most despair, and also in a strange way most hope, because they were indefatigable. And the third place I went was Quebec, northeastern Canada, but I prefer to refer to it as Nitassinan, which is the Innu name for the unceded Innu territories. And so we're talking 600 miles northeast of Montreal, Quebec, on the north shore of the Gulf of St. Lawrence. And there, a river called in Innu the Mutahekau Shipu became, also in 2021, the same year as the judgment of Los Cedros, became the first river in Canada to have its rights declared in a joint declaration issued by the Innu Council at the small township of Equanicht, and a, as it were, white council in the regional municipality of Mingan. And I spent 12 days traveling down that river, and that river, how shall I put it? It wore away what remained of my shields of rationalism, we could say. And I, at the very end of the book, really the river wrote the last few pages of the book. I have never had an experience like what happened towards the end of that river journey. And that itself was a function of the many river people and river ideas and rivers that I had been lucky to spend the previous 2 to 3 years traveling with and immersed in. And eventually I came back to my own country, and I realized that these stories which I had met elsewhere were being told in my country too. I just hadn't heard them. I hadn't seen them. And in the time I had been traveling as well, the crisis had become more apparent. The resistance and the organization of the guardianship and the civil activism around rivers had become much more vibrant, much more numerous, shall we say. And extraordinary things are now happening in my country. I'm fully confident that we will have a revitalized river system, a revived river system in between 20 and 30 years. And we had the biggest march for clean water in the history of these islands that I live on, called in exactly a year ago. And to that march, every group who came brought a small bottle of water from their river or their lake or their sea. And those waters were woven into a big flask in front of Parliament. And some of that water was used to make the ink inside the pen that I now sign the river book with. So the ink carries protest, it carries activism, it carries hope, and it literally carries the water of 108 rivers. So what I've seen around the world, what I've seen in my own country, and what I see every day from GARN and Viviana and Ramiro and those who are fighting for a better, juster future, is the new being built in the shell of the old. A prefigurative politics of not rehearsal but performance, realizing that the future is already here and we must act as though it is, because that acting is action, it is not rehearsal. So I feel the immense, inspiring, organizing, energizing power of these river recognitions, these river declarations. To use Viviana's wonderful phrase, they create trajectories of mobilization. We know that rivers heal themselves with astonishing speed if they are given the chance, and as they heal themselves, they heal us too with extraordinary power. So, thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you. Thank you. You're such an inspiration, and thank you, as I was saying, for giving us this gift to the world. I feel that we receive it as a gift because it's inspiring. Your book really bridges law and imagination. So thank you for bringing that together, and it's true that the mobilizing power of water is extremely big. I want to point out that before we had this election last Sunday in Ecuador on September 16th, there was the fifth river, as we call it. There was a huge march of the people of Cuenca who marched for the river, and they call themselves the fifth river because of in Cuenca there are four rivers. So people are getting mobilized because people understand that we are nature, that we are water, and that is mobilizing us. So to start this conversation with all of you, I want to, I had a couple of questions prepared. So I'm going to go ahead and read those. And we also have some questions in the chat. So if Robert, Vivi, and Rami, you can take notes, I will read them out. And then I will go around with a round with the same order with Ramiro, Viviana, and Robert answering those questions. So my first question, Robert, is regarding your first inspiration to explore the ideas of rivers as living beings. You have mentioned that you started writing this book 5 years ago. But what came first, right? The chicken or the egg? What was your first inspiration? You've talked about your travels and your experiences in Ecuador, in Canada, and India, and in your own country. But was there a specific moment or a place or a river that really shifted your thinking, or something that really sparked your mind? So I always love to ask that question to authors, like what really inspired you. But then I also wanted to say that this webinar is hosted by the GARN Youth Hub. And thank you, Tosana, for being here and for leading this book club. And we have seen, and we just saw in COP, the great mobilization of youth. So what message do you want to give youth and future lawyers and activists and scientists and storytellers from what you take out of your book? So I do feel that we have a big youth audience here today, and I think that they are really driving a big movement. So I would love to ask those two questions. And then maybe I'm going to go to the other questions, so please take notes. So Annie is writing and saying, Viviana, an inspiring message for those of us who make human rights a habit. But sometimes we find ourselves faced with a harsh, difficult reality that favors large extractive conglomerates and undermines human rights and more than humans. So maybe that's a question for Viviana. Then we continue with a comment from Anne, and she says that in the Aguarico River in Ecuador, this river has a long history of contamination from the petroleum industry. She has been in the Aico Fandoreno community and have read some books, and this river deserves much respect and surroundings areas of Lago Agrio and Sucumbíos. This river story has impacted me regularly, and I have also been a lagoon fed. So it's really interesting because, as Jose was pointing out, we really wanted to hear the stories or the experiences of those attending the webinar today about their relationship with the water. So thank you, Anne, for sharing this story and this relationship with the Aguarico. She's also saying that a stream that off of the Napo River to visit the Quichua indigenous people who were 4 cabins known as the Manakin Tropical Life. This stream is only an idea of paradise and is still pristine. Only 5 families living along the stream, and there are canoes and paddles with no motor. So a lovely picture and a lovely place maybe to visit. And the last river that she wants to mention is the one in San Pedro River, that is actually an affluent of the Machángara River, that she has been taking part in the Monjas River as well, and all the cleanups that are happening around Quito as well. And those mingas have given her hope. And then I'm going to go with a message from Jose Arturo Maldonado, and he says, Hola from Puerto Rico. I live near the Bay Area, the Bay of San Juan. where the Rio Piedras River ends its course. The Rio Piedras is the main river in the capital city. I was very privileged actually to visit the Rio Piedras of the island, and it has been greatly impacted by urban development. I live near what remains of the Quebrada Margarita, one of the small streams that flows from the Rio Piedras. Where my house stands, the stream used to flow. This is reminded me every time that it rains heavily. Unfortunately, the Rio Piedras is threatened by a channeling project by the U.S. Corps of Engineers. The community is fighting for it. Some of us will dream of recognizing Rio Piedras' rights for the restitution of and regaining its place in the center of the city. And saludos, I was actually able to visit this river with him. So thank you for that. And then one last question from Maria Sara Gijon. She says the Machángara River is in my city, a city that has contaminated and destroyed and weakened this river. I don't have a related relationship with the Machángara River, but my dad had it when he was a child. He was able to see it and feel it, and maybe also smell this scent of mint that Ramiro was sharing. And she has had contact with two rivers, the San Pedro and Pita. We need more of the people from Quito to be connected to our rivers and to defend our rights. We'll be happier and better people if we do that. So I'm going to open the floor now with those questions and comments related to the people that are here today and how they relate to their own rivers. And maybe allow first Ramiro, then Viviana, and then Robert to have some final comments about this and about the river, about the book as well, that we, of course, all welcome everybody and really hope that everybody can read it. So Ramiro, do you want to go next? Rami, estás...
I'm sorry, Ramiro's muted. Robert mentioned that in England there's no river, there's no healthy rivers right now, and that you cannot touch them, that you cannot swim, that you cannot drink that water. And I thought that the same is happening. It's the same is happening in Latin America and in the world. And I believe that in Ecuador is pathetic as well in this sense. And the threat, it's not only the contamination, the pollution with waste, but it's also illegal mining in general, right? But what Andre is mentioning about Aguarico River, Napo, and San Pedro, to me, is that we are killing the integrity of rivers. And I believe that this is because of a short-term benefit, that we are destroying the source, one of the most important sources of life and health, and we're destroying because of gold, because of minerals. And this is one of the most stupid things that human beings are doing, is that they're not seeing the value of what we need to live, that is water, food, air, and it's giving value to a system that is taking us to death. So I believe that this river movement, because I do believe that there's a global movement about rivers, and I think that Robert's book reflects a positive symptom of humanity. People are seeing and going, given an opportunity to the rivers right now. And this is what Minga was very important in San Pedro River. This is a social movement of cleaning rivers. Of course, we are not going to be able to clean 100% this river, but this allows us to connect with the pain of this river. And I believe what happened in Rio Machángara, because right now in Ecuador, we are forcing as well the rights of Lago San Pablo, with River Puerto Viejo, with Rio Guayas. There's tons of initiatives around rivers, and I feel that this humanity is waking up. And I believe that new awake that goes, we're starting to have conscience to act upon this. And that was the comment that I would like to add.
celebrate to act. I think that the reason why we're doing this webinar, of course, is to celebrate you, Robert, and your book, but it's also to know that we are getting together and that we're moving towards a new movement, that we're joining together with the force of the earth. So thank you for that invitation, Ramiro, that water is moving us. It's moving us to clean it up. I was actually yesterday with the people from the Mingas, and they were saying that the Minga that they did on Saturday and Sunday, it wasn't enough. There's been raining so much, they weren't able to clean not even a bit of what is happening. And these Mingas are an amazing way, as you say, of connecting. We cannot clean the river, but it's a way of connecting with that pain. So thank you for that, and thank you for everybody driving those Mingas that are so important to clean and to bring consciousness. Blanca Rios was sharing yesterday about the numbers of plastics and pollutants and actually sickness that are in the Machángara River still. And it's amazing that we people in Ecuador, in Quito, don't know enough about what that river carries and how should we be cleaning up. Is not only a responsibility of the government, but over everybody to clean up that river. So thank you, Ramiro, for that. We need to acknowledge how dangerous it is to this disconnection, how dangerous that disconnection is. Vivi, do you want to share a little bit about the Atrato, about an answer maybe to Annie?
I think that we still have a lot of challenges as a society, and as humanity, to reestablish the health of our rivers and those ecosystems around them. And I believe that the rights of nature's movement can help to do this. Obviously, the rights by itself, it's not going to solve all of our problems, because after that we also have declarations and also the framework, the legal framework that protects the companies, right? So we have weak responsibilities for the state. So we need to keep having these conversations, and we need to build these new elements and tools in terms of legal aspects. But the rights of natures also recognize this ethic around our society that we understand that has dignity. What are the limits also that we have in between human beings and beings, right? To respect our planet. So the right also helps that. And we need to build new expressions, social expressions. So for instance, art, literature, social movements, activism, and especially this, that the younger generations want to consolidate and speak about consensus about this ethics, where we involve more actors beyond humans. It's fundamental. So yes, I think there are frustrating moments because the challenges are so big, but every single effort, it's very important and mobilizes us as humans to be able to transcend.
Upset with like that the power of like industry of like the fossil fuel industry and in industries in general. We were in COP and really hoping to see a good result, and like the fossil fuel industry and its interests are always impeding a real change, but the change is happening and it's coming from the people. So I really thank you for being the guardian of the Atrato, for Rami to being guardian of the Machángara, and for making the change happen in spite of like the governments and the power of the fossil fuel industry and all these polluting industries. Robert?
Yeah, in England we say the change is rising from the riverbank up. And this year alone in England, we have seen, I think now, somewhere between 7 and 12 recognitions or declarations of river rights, beginning with the Ouse, the River Ouse in Sussex, all at very local level, often sort of local council. But that, to me, is where durable change is built. It builds from the ground upwards rather than being imposed top down. And Nadia, you asked if there was a particular inspiration. Well, I live very close to a spring where a river is born, and that spring has been flowing for around 11,000 years, apart from one year when it dried up, and it gave birth to the city, my city, Cambridge, the university, all that has come from the university. It has been a historical actor, an agent. It has organized human life around itself. We too often forget the agency of water because we prioritize the agency of humans. But it now lives on life support. So there is literally a heart, like a heart pump fitted into the ground next to the springs, which draws water from further down the river system and forces it into the ground next to the springs so that the springs keep flowing, because otherwise they would dry up because of climate, because of abstraction. So seeing my little springs that have brought so much life themselves now close to death was the beginning. And then lastly, I was asked about a message to young people. Well, I mean, really, I would prefer to receive messages from young people because they've heard enough from my generation. But I will just say that the line that I learned, I think, or the line that condenses best what I have learned from these years with the river people is despair is a luxury and hope is a discipline. And the luxury of despair is self-explanatory, but I felt it over and over again as I watched activists working in desperate circumstances. For me to despair would be a luxury. Hope is a discipline because on the one hand it requires imagination to dream a world otherwise, which is what Ecuador has done again and again. And then it requires the discipline of organization and work and time to bring that other world into being. So it is not a lesson. The younger people know this already, but despair is a luxury and hope is a discipline.
Thank you, Robert. That was beautiful. Thank you. And Tos, you're you have as one of the facilitators in the book club. Any message that you also want to bring to the youth? Maybe even a schedule. I think that it will be lovely if the book club includes soon, as you were saying, the Robert's book. Tos, do you want to share with us a little bit? Tosana?
Sorry, my connection is lagging a bit, so I didn't hear the last 5 minutes. I don't know if you can hear me now.
Now we can hear you. Go ahead, Tosana.
She didn't hear the last
Okay, I'll just try to say
minute.
something.
You
So what I really
are
appreciate, Robert, is the balancing of despair and hope in your words and also in your book. And I think this is really crucial to mobilize youth, the recognition of despair, but also the encouragement of hope. So I really want to thank you for bringing that in. And I would love to ask more questions, but I think we are running out of time. But maybe I can send you an email later. So thanks so much.
Thank you, Tos. And my internet was cutting you off a little bit. I think that everybody heard you. Thank you so much for sharing that view and for including this amazing literature in the book club and sharing the message with the Youth Hub. So I want to end just by saying that I really want to have this be an invitation to join us on a journey that can really change how we see the world. We want you to please share and read The River Alive. I think this is an amazing support for the whole movement, Robert. So thank you so much. and for us to know and to learn and to discover why rivers and everything that is rising has rights. Because of course rivers are speaking, and the world, I feel, is finally listening. So we, of course, really encourage everybody to read Is a River Alive? And of course, join this movement to defend the rivers and become rivers, to be alive and to respect them and defend them. So I really want to thank these two beautiful and amazing defenders that are here with us today, Vivi and Ramiro. Thank you, Robert, for bringing the voice of the book and the voice of the rivers. Thank you, Tos, for bringing the voice of youth. And I really want to encourage everybody to join a movement to work together, because as Cuenca managed to be the fifth river, we can definitely be the river that the world needs to be mobilized to clean those rivers, to acknowledge that we are part of the river, and that we don't understand that nature has inherent rights, and that we need governments to respect that, and we need to make sure that that is upheld in law, and that we understand that relationship, that we are nature defending itself. We are doomed. So we are the only hope. Civil society is the only hope. And thank you, Robert, for sharing this gift with us.
Thank you, Natty. Thank you all. It's been an absolute joy. And I'll come and see you in Ecuador soon.
Please.
Natty.
Please.
Hope to see you soon in Ecuador.
Thank you, everyone,
Thank
for
you
being
so much.
here. A joy.
Thank
Thank
you
you,
so much, Vivi,
Jesus.
Robert, and Natty.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody.
Ciao.
So
Nice to
beautiful
see
to
you.
share with you all. Thank you all.